Hey folks, John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here. And today we're doing part 9 of our Transportation Fraud Prevention series, Owner Operators versus Carriers. Uh, we just chose this topic at this time because we're seeing a great deal of fraud in the way that carriers are treating owner operators in some very specific cases. And so, what we're hoping to do here is to equip owner operators with the tools necessary to help protect themselves from predatory carriers who are seeking uh, to steal off the backs of the owner operators who work for them. Before we get into that, we do need to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor, AccuBid Pro.
Do you know your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable, even including a more detailed breakdown of each bid. Download the app today and get your 30-day free trial of AccuBid Pro, available on the App Store and Google Play. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
So, if you're new to the industry and you bought your truck and you need to get on with a carrier who has an authority, then this is definitely something you want to pay very close attention to over the next 30 minutes. So, there's a misconception in how the term owner operator and carrier are used. So, to briefly define them, owner operators are independent truck drivers who own their own equipment but do not have an authority, or at least are not operating under their own authority. You see a lot of carriers doing that these days where they get an authority, but they realize, oh, wait a minute, you have to have 6 months to a year of active authority in order to be able to work with most brokers. So then they become owner operators. They lease on to another carrier, yet maintain their insurance and whatnot so they can keep their own authority alive until it matures to a certain point. We see that a lot, but for our purposes, let's just say owner operators do not have their own authority. Okay, just makes it simple. Where carriers are companies that possess an authority and are equipped with either company trucks and or owner operators. Pretty simple, but those terms are confused in the industry quite a bit. So hopefully that straightened that out. So how carriers get owner operators is usually by advertising, whether that's in social media or flyers at truck stops, postings on job sites, or even word of mouth. But an owner operator needs to be very, very picky about selecting a carrier they want to work with. I mean, after all, this is a business relationship. So you need to pay attention to who it is you're going into business with. You know, and frankly, why does somebody want to be an owner operator instead of being a carrier? Well, I've kind of already explained the issues about the age of authority, so I don't have that listed here. But a lot of it has to do with regulatory issues. A guy may be really good at driving and really good at fixing his own equipment, but he knows nothing about running a business. That is usually a classic reason for someone to be an owner operator versus a carrier. Let's face it, a carrier has to deal with things like IFTA and FMCSA filings and UCRs and all this other regulatory stuff that an owner operator really doesn't have to worry about. And then the carrier is also subject to the impacts of actions taken by the owner operator. So if the owner operator gets hit with an inspection, level 1, 2, or 3, and gets taken out of service, that really doesn't impact the owner operator at the end of the day. It impacts the carrier. So the carrier is the one who's taking all this risk. So there's going to be a lot of vetting done by a carrier to an owner operator. But I still say owner operators, that door needs to swing both ways. So before an owner operator signs to lease on to a carrier, owner operators need to do a deep dive into a carrier's history. There's a lot of ways to do this. You can go into Safer, you can go and check reviews. Um, those are probably the most popular ways to try to figure out about a carrier's history. You also want to make sure you read that agreement very closely. And whatever you do as an owner operator, do not do a thing without a contract. Absolutely, positively, do not do anything in somebody else's name without a contract. I have watched people get burned by this too many times. Okay. And read that dang contract. Read it from start to finish. Know what you are signing on for, because a carrier who is behaving in an unscrupulous manner, who wants to sit there and profit off of dumb drivers, are going to have hidden costs peppered throughout that contract. And you want to make sure you identify each and every single cost that's in there and know how they apply to you and when you would have to realize those costs. Otherwise, you could just sign the contract and not realize what you're getting yourself into. And that will burn you every single time. That's a promise. I like to ask for references. We'll get more into how references are done in a few minutes, but I would definitely ask for them. And I would definitely ask broker and carrier friends of yours to look into the carrier you choose to sign on with to make sure that it's a good fit. So let's start with a contract. What kinds of things do you need to see in a contract? Probably the most important thing is insurance, because insurance can swing a lot of different ways in this industry. Your carrier could require the owner operator carry all of the insurance for themselves, and then have the owner operator list the carrier as additionally insured on the COI, not as a certificate holder, as additionally insured. That means that your carrier can file a claim on the owner operator's insurance policy as needed. So you need to make sure that those kinds of requirements are spelled out in the contract. In some cases, all the coverages are provided by the carrier, in which case the owner operator may be paying a premium every week for that coverage. And there are things you should do if that's the case as well. We'll dig a little bit more into that as we go. Is there any mention inside the contract as to whether or not pay is done by a percentage basis? And if it's done by a percentage basis, does the carrier provide unaltered copies of the rate confirmations for the owner operator? They should. Who is covering the different kinds of coverages? There's a lot that's going to be covered inside of these contracts, and you need to pay attention to the different types of coverages and who's going to be responsible for what. You also need to pay attention to the fees and costs that are in there. Some of the costs that you may see hidden throughout the contract would be fees for being late or early to pickups, bad conduct while doing business. Whether you're on the shipping dock and you're cussing up a storm or whatever, there may be a fee for that peppered in there. There may be startup costs that you have to worry about. ELDs typically cost about $800-900. They may charge you for that up front, or they may charge it to you over time. Who knows? It should be spelled out in the contract. How do fuel cards work if they offer fuel cards? Do they provide tools, signage for the trucks, things of that nature? All of these things should be spelled out in a contract. Closing fees. If there is an early termination fee, some of the more predatory contracts we have seen have a massive early contract termination fee. And those have been wiping out owner operators left and right. And, they think they're owed a lot of money by the carrier, but there's a early contract termination fee in there of like $10,000. So whatever is owed to the owner operator, the carrier keeps at that point. legally. So you got to watch out for predatory folks like that. Read the contract, start to finish. Frankly, hire an attorney to go over it with you, a transportation attorney to review it with you, to let you know whether or not you're well enough protected. Let's face it, as I said before, this is a relationship, a business relationship, and that carrier is going to do due diligence on the owner operator. That carrier is going to be looking at all sorts of things because that carrier needs to know what kind of cost you are to his company. That is going to help determine the rate that they're going to charge you for the privilege of utilizing their authority. With that being said, what are they doing to do their due diligence? Well, that is all found in the driver qualification file, or DQF. If you're an owner operator and you don't know what a DQF is, you are with the wrong carrier. Promise you, from start to finish. Every carrier is going to have a file for every single one of their drivers, owner operators, company drivers, etc. And it's going to have specific information in it. It's going to have a copy of the driver's license. It's going to have a copy of your MVR in it. They have to check your MVR on an annual basis, and those MVRs are kept in your folder. There should be a pre-employment drug screen in there and random test records. Certainly information about the drug testing consortium that you're in. Any equipment info, whatever equipment you bring, of course, the VIN numbers, the registrations, cab cards, all that stuff is going to be kept in the driver qualification file. If you have any special credentials, a TWIC card, TSA, hazmat certificate, CTPAT, whatever, if you have any kind of credentials, that's going to be in your file as well. But all of these things are going to be used to evaluate you as an owner operator and the value that you bring to the carrier, or the cost that you are to the carrier. So let's face it, if you've got a bad MVR because you've had a couple of accidents, you're going to cost a lot of money to that carrier in terms of insurance. You know, because if you have another one while driving for that carrier, it's going to go on that carrier's record. Now, if I'm a carrier, I want to know you're not going to have an accident. I want to know you're safe. Well, this is how they're going to do that. This is how they're going to check on that. And if they don't do this, they're probably not a good carrier to be with. Just throwing that out there. So you, as an owner operator, need to do due diligence on the carrier as well. Now, I've kind of mentioned a couple things you need to do already, but we highlight everything here. Take a look at that MC number on Safer. Pull it up. I would check the authority history, and I would check the insurance history specifically. You want to know if their authority has been shut down for any length of time and why. You want to know how long their authority has been active, because let's face it, if it hasn't been active for more than a year, why are you signing on with them? Most brokers will not work with a carrier that has less than 6 months on their record. Okay. A few of them are going to require at least a year of active authority. So you want to make sure that the carrier you're signing on to is going to have at least a year of authority. You also want to check and see if they've had any issues keeping up with their insurance. Has their insurance been forcibly canceled? Now, it can be renewed on a regular basis. You know, it's going to be renewed annually anyway. But if there appears to be an out-of-cycle new policy or a revocation of a policy and then an immediate reinstatement, there might be some financial issues in the company you don't want to be part of. Throwing that out there. You want to also take a look at Google or other kinds of reviews to see if anything comes up on that carrier. Google's a very good one. If there are upset drivers, Google's probably one of the first places that they're going to go to report the carrier. So that's a good place to check. I would also check DAT reviews if you have access to DAT, and truck stop reviews as well. Now, if you don't have access to those platforms, find somebody who does, whether it's a broker or another carrier, and ask them to check. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking for help in these situations. Do a social media search. Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn. Those are some of the best places to go, because if a carrier is doing something bad, It will be exposed on those platforms. Somebody is going to say something about it. That's how we find half the people that we chase after. So by all means, check those sources. I would also ask the carrier to provide you references. Specifically, I would ask for 2 or 3 current owner operators and 2 or 3 past owner operators. And then you want to talk to them. You want to find out from them, were they ever late getting paid? Did they ever have any benefits or anything turned off, and why? For example, if the carrier offers a fuel card as a benefit, did it ever get turned off? Why did it get turned off? If they left the carrier, why? There are a lot of carriers these days who lease on because they're waiting for their own authority to mature to a certain point. Well, they get to that point and then they leave the carrier so they can start up as a carrier themselves. Hey, no problems. But if there's a reason why they left, like, well, the carrier was difficult to work with for this reason or that reason, you want to know that before you sign that contract. Now, here's a cautionary tale. I'm not going to mention the specific carrier, but there are 2 specific cases that come to mind that this fits flawlessly. So what happens is you have carriers who cater to new owner operators, people who are new to the business because, frankly, they don't know the business. They offer themselves as teaching carriers, where they train an owner operator to become a carrier themselves. So what they do is they put out posts on different kind of job boards, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. And they've got these ads plastered all over the place to try to recruit owner operators from coming on. Well, once they recruit those owner operators, they give them a contract to sign, and inevitably the owner operator has no idea what they're looking at. So they just sign on the dotted line and they call it a day. They get an ELD, they get their signage, slap it on their truck, call dispatch, I'm ready for a load. Dispatch sends them off and they're off and running at the races. Well, in these relationships, you're typically paid a week behind. That's sometimes referred to as a week in the hole. Carriers are typically paid through a factoring company, which pays usually within 24 to 48 hours. So they'll get the money after a couple of days, or if they are not using a factoring company, they get paid within 30 days from the broker. So there's usually a little bit of time in the hole while the carrier gets paid for the load that the owner operator did. And then the carrier is going to turn around and issue the owner operator a settlement statement. And that settlement statement will break down whatever money is owed to the carrier by the owner operator, and then whatever revenue the owner operator generated. And thus the end result is the owner operator's pay and what day that's going to pay out. Most cases, carriers pay on a Friday and they pay for the previous week's work. That's normal. Okay. So when payday comes around for the prior week, you got the settlement statement a couple of days before saying you can expect, $1,000 to go into your account. And then that $1,000 is not there. There's a problem. You should be asking a lot of questions at that point. Well, in both of these case studies, the carrier would make excuses on payday. Oh, there was an issue processing the payment. You'll have it on Monday. There was a delay at the bank, whatever. They'll make up some kind of excuse that sounds halfway plausible. It's a stall tactic because they want to stall you so you can keep running over the weekend or whatever it is you're doing. Monday comes in both of these cases, and the pay is still not there. So the owner operator calls and says, "Hey, Mr. Carrier, I haven't seen my money yet. What's going on?" Oh, we're working on it. We're working on it. But the paycheck never comes. And the more frustrated the driver gets, The owner operator or the carrier then goes to the fuel card because in both cases, the carrier provided a fuel card. The carrier shuts off the fuel card and leaves the owner operator stranded wherever it is the hell they are. And the owner operator is like, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't have to be treated this way. I don't have to put up with this. I'm gone. I've had enough. You know, you can take this job and shove it, or however you want to say it. Now that's when the owner speaks up again, when the carrier speaks up again and says, you have a $10,000 contract termination fee. Thank you very much. We're keeping the rest of your money. Have a nice life. Whoa. All of a sudden, the owner operator is out a ton of money. And it's all because of these predatory contracts that the owner operator didn't take the time to read. You know, there's also very poor communication between dispatch and the driver. In one particular case, I know of a driver who was forced to deadhead from Washington State to Florida State, all the way clear across the country. And the carrier expected the owner operator to pay for the fuel for that. I mean, it was done at dispatch's request. So why should the owner operator have to pay for the fuel for that? What's happening in these cases is that the carriers are intentionally scamming what they call stupid drivers. What they really are is drivers who have no experience, so they don't know any better. And the only reason why they realize they've been scammed is because they have no money by the time, 2, 3, 4 weeks go by. Another thing that we have seen in some of these cases is if the fuel card itself was not working and then the owner operator came out of pocket to cover fuel, that is a bad juju situation right away. Right away. That should never happen. And if it does, there better be a damn good explanation and you need to be seeking help. I mentioned early on, when you get that contract, before you sign it, have an attorney review it. Maintain a relationship with that attorney, because if this carrier gets stupid on you and starts doing stupid things and playing stupid games, you've got the right to sue the bastard. Okay? So pay attention to what you're doing, what your rights are, what the contract allows the carrier and doesn't allow the carrier to do. Because a lot of cases, the carrier is going to come back and say, it's a civil matter. You have the contract. You signed it. Screw you, pound sand. And if it goes to court, the carrier may very well win because it's in the contract. Pay attention. It is for your protection. That's why attorneys exist. Do not cheap out just because you want a job. You're trying to find a business partner. You want a good business partner. Do not let them fail you. We are here to help. If you have an issue in an owner-operator carrier relationship, feel free to contact me, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, at 912-346-8456. Email me at jcantera@vigilanttransport.com. I'll do everything I can to give you a hand. I can help you to find an attorney if you need to. I can help you identify and report bad carriers to the government in certain cases. But in a lot of these owner-operator contract issues, we can't help you recover your money. The only thing we can do is try to help you get justice. But justice is going to require DOT and FMCSA to enforce regulations. And that is how you're going to get justice against some of these bad carriers. Protect yourself from ever getting in bed with a bad carrier and follow the list that I gave earlier. Make sure you are vetting a carrier completely before you sign on with them. You do not want to get caught in one of these scams. Most of the people who get caught up in a situation like this were hanging on by a thread when they first started working. And since they never got paid, some of them have lost their trucks. Some of them have lost their homes, have had family problems and have lost their families as a result. Guys, these are devastating impacts. Know who you are doing business with, please, for the love of God, read the contract. If you need help, please reach out to me. Next week, we will have part 10 of our series, and part 10 deals with reputation management. So please make sure you tune in for that as we go. Until then, stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride.